Welcome to Redhead Rewriting Reality by Kim Iverson. The story of my life as I figure out who I am after a lifetime of abuse and share my journey with that. Sharing the story of building my author career, the struggles, bettering self, and creating a new life. I'm a multi-genre author who publishes under Kimberly Sue Iverson. If you'd like to explore my work, visit KimberlySueIverson.com. This audio is intended for an adult audience. Themes and topics may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. Now, get yourself comfy and make yourself at home, and let's dive in. Hope of the future, share, and chat. Here is another random share for one of my novels. I will do one that I used to focus on a lot. Hope of the future. This story is one that I will be giving a rewrite later on. To those who buy the book, they'll be able to get a free copy of it when it releases too. I debate making a list of any kind for it. Newsletter. I think I will rely on those who want it to follow me, and whenever I announce that down the line, they're welcome to contact me at that time. Or I'll just do a free giveaway link for it. That way, who really wants it will get it. I won't chase after anyone. This story has already underwent plenty of rewrites. But in this case, it's actually getting one to tie it in more into the world it's in. So the core of the story won't really change. It'll probably just end up being minor things to really tie it in. When I first wrote the book, it wasn't attached to the Guardian of Life world. I built the world off the book, but also off the second book, Daughter of the Red Planet. So Daughter of the Red Planet ties way more into the Guardian of Life world than Hope of the Future does, because that's where a lot of the world began. To tie Hope of the Future in, I just want to ensure there are more connections there, to be cohesive with the rest of the story. Hope does show in this world too later on. She meets a special character. The core of the story won't change, because then it might mess with everything to do with the world. But I will adjust and bring out more details in it, which will just add a little bit more detail. Hope of the Future underwent a lot of rewrites and edits because it was one of the first stories that I ever wrote. I had a lot of work to do to also tie it together because it was built off of a few stories. I'd had this one story where the girl was essentially imprisoned by some rich dude, another where she was the only, or rare, female who could bear children, and others were hunting her. Not too far off from the storyline that Hope became, but it did become richer and more detailed when I began to edit it together with the other story. Because of those things, I also ended up creating Hope to become something other than human. I don't think she was anything but human in any of those other stories. I can't recall for sure if she was named Hope in either story either. The rich man in imprisonment, I don't think so. The other one, I'd have to go find the original file to determine that, but I don't want to. So here are the first couple of chapters from Hope of the Future by Kimberly Sue Iverson, read by the author herself. Ta-da! Although if you're reading this instead of listening, then enjoy reading the first few chapters on the blog. Remember that these blogs are essentially a transcript of the video/podcast and vice versa. I don't try to edit out the words all the time that implies either way because I figure my followers, readers, fans, whatever you'd like to call yourselves, don't need their hands to be held, and you can figure out the difference for yourself. So, Hope of the Future, Chapter 1. Hey, gorgeous. How about you and I go to Scott's and have us a little fun? A man called out. Hope cocked her head toward the foul-mouthed, greasy-haired man who gawked at her from across the remains of the street. Littered with filth, the cracked and broken cement that separated them was beyond repair from centuries of abuse. After he grabbed his junk, he threw his hands up in the air. He figured it a gesture one couldn't resist, a signal of high importance. He placed his hands on his hips, waiting for her reply. How does he know I'm female? Unshaven, leathery and grimy, dirt covered every inch of him she could see. It was a good thing he stood across the street. No doubt he smelled grubby and rank, disgusting from spending so long on the street. He seemed older than 30. That wasn't odd for a free bird, but it made him appear worse and older than he was. Freebirds didn't adapt and change like the rest of the human race. They were nothing like amaranthines. Freebirds remained similar to humans from time lost, and they aged more like humans did once upon a time. Individuals who sometimes looked well into their 80s, despite their youth, before age and death claimed them, if they made it that long without hunters slaughtering them. The freebirds didn't bother to take care of themselves. They wouldn't survive long, so they didn't waste their time on such trivial things. Drugs, disease, famine. Those things killed with no exception. If they were caught by hunters or amaranthine soldiers, the freebirds were exterminated or converted into a sleigh pet. That was the one thing the freebirds cared about, escaping the life of a sleigh pet. Yet a sleigh pet's life was far better than one on the streets. For some of the freebirds, the ruthless envy claimed. The freebirds' immortality haunted their every waking hour. It was rare to find a freebird who lived their life any other way than to pass the time, who didn't sit by to wait for death to claim them at last, to free them, who was more than a street animal covered in filth, just like this horrid man. Many of these imbeciles had tried her, and many had failed. Hope narrowed her eyes. Forget it, she said. I wouldn't go with you if you chained me and dragged me there. Go find someone else. Her hand drifted behind her back. Her long, slender fingers slipped around the handle of the blade she kept tucked under her waistband. She tightened her grip. If he made a move for her, he'd be dead before he could cross the street. Centuries of little use left the building behind the man in shambles. Plants crawled over the entire exterior, claiming it further with each day that passed. Birds burst forth off the bare eaves and into the sky, spooked by their own shadows. They would rather that than the alternative. In this day and age, shadows lived and breathed. Years of filth thrown into the atmosphere had settled and decorated every crevice. No electricity and no life left the old office building dark behind the man. Nobody was filing any paperwork. There weren't any phones ringing. People weren't gathering around the ice cooler to chat about their weekend. Where the windows once belonged, glass was now gone. The few edges that survived in spots acted as blades, ready to pierce a hole in the skin of any who dared enter and tried to be brave. Everything inside was as dark as the exterior and held just as many perils for any would-be scavengers. Anyone who entered one of those buildings deserved the death they received. From up the street came soft whispers. Put, 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 put. Nobody else would have heard the noise. Hope flicked a quick check toward the sound. Her sight honed in on the entity as though she looked through a telescope. A tired old cat crossed the dilapidated lane. Mangy and unkempt, the feline slunk from one side of the street to the other. Its attention shot back and forth, up and down, as it took in every last inch of space it inhabited, wary of possible predators. The innocent creature was missing hair in spots and seemed crazed, yet it remained alert enough to remain near the ground, trying to keep its body as invisible as possible. Hope shook her head. 5 more minutes and someone would have it for their dinner if it didn't cling to the safety of the shadows. It may not look like many people or things roamed these parts, but for that rare piece of food wandering through, a starved being was afoot. Food and water wasn't easily come by, and this poor animal was putting itself on a silver platter. The man took a step toward her, thought better of it, and stopped. He waved his arms downward and stumbled with the motion. "Fuck you, slut!" He gave her the finger, which shook. "I was your last chance. See if I care you sleep out here in the streets." He lurched away. "More like I was yours," Hope grumbled under her breath. Watching the man retreat, her hand drifted away from her blade. She kept an eye on him until he disappeared around the corner. He had a point. The streets were nowhere you wanted to find yourself at night. You may as well sign your life over. Another sound came from up the street. Louder, deeper. A chill crawled along Hope's spine like a kitten who hasn't had their claws cut. Chapter 2. It happened as they predicted, and then some. For many years the prophecies came and went. Humans failed to understand the true catastrophic possibilities of what would happen, until the day it happened. The world as everyone knew it ended. It didn't happen fast, and it didn't happen the way they said it would, or when. Those predictions made in the past served as warnings. the final laugh in the face of the human race. In times past, they said the world would end December 2012. People believed the Mayans told the truth when the world started to crumble. The ones who believed that the Mayans hadn't predicted a thing and chalked it up to confidence were the first who went. They were the non-believers, the ones who lived in a black and white reality. People who didn't possess an open mind. Humans who didn't see what happened right in front of their faces. The people who didn't face reality. They couldn't. How could they when most of the world didn't understand? Those sad individuals were the ones preyed upon because they couldn't adapt. They didn't want to. The government collapsed. The non-believers died. Everyone faltered. The human race wasn't the same once the planet changed. And change the planet did. Reality itself changed. Storms increased their frequency. Electricity faltered. Human race couldn't stop what happened, though the best scientists had tried. The internet slowed to a crawl, and people gave up on it. So by the time it died, it had been abandoned. Humans disconnected when the internet disconnected. Plants grew wilder and adapted to the changes. They grew fiercer. With the altered weather, life became much more complex. Animals turned on owners. Many animals stopped being prey and became the hunters. Water and heat became a luxury people couldn't afford. A cup of water became gold to barter with. Food grew scarce. It didn't matter if you were rich or you were poor. Everyone suffered. The planet took back what it once owned, and the wild thrived. Humans became helpless. Hope ducked around the corner, then disappeared down another street. She needed to find shelter soon, needed to remain invisible. Before the cleaners came. Sounds of them drew nearer by the second. Light of day gave way to the hazards that night brought on. A signal the cleaners were on their way. Mechanical, cold, merciless. Once they came on patrol, they wiped out all life they encountered in every zone, whether small or large, whether threat or no threat. When the cleaners came, nothing stopped them. The streets were cleared at night. A movement caught her eye when she went to cross the street. She spun to face the newcomer, ready to kill, only to find her own image in an old aluminum garbage can. She shook her head at her reaction and rubbed at the grime that covered the surface. With a glance back and forth along the street, then behind her, she found the lanes surrounding her empty of life. No sounds but the distant rustle of wind through the streets and the cleaners. Hope wiped the aluminum until she revealed a neat little circle. She grimaced at the soot on her hand, then rubbed it off on her pants. The surface gave her a blurred and flawed presence. Yet what caught her eye wasn't the weird appearance to her skin. It was what had slipped from her hooded jacket. A long, vibrant, dark purple wave crept down the front of her coat. With a sigh, she grabbed the hair and shoved it back inside the confines of the leather. She zipped up her coat, hitched it higher on her body, and tugged the hood further over her face, once more shrouding her looks from view. She clenched her teeth against the chill and took a deep breath to steady herself. The bright violet orbs mirrored in the garbage can once more dimmed to a human color. No wonder that cretin thought she was female. She often considered cutting her long hair, because so few female freebirds wandered around with long hair, but she always chickened out. Long hair made it too obvious for the men to single someone out. The women wanted to pass as men in the streets. They were safer that way. Not even the men let their hair get long. Hope tried her damnedest to keep a low profile. Being female out here was dangerous. In this zone, it became far more perilous. It was too close to his zone. When men spotted Hope, Scott's was the first place their little brains considered taking her to. Hope did her best to avoid Scott's Club, or Scott's, as everyone referred to it. Most females did, but then they didn't have history with that amaranthine. Scott's was a club men brought women to in place of currency. The level of interest Scott showed to the female determined whether the men gained a few days of free room and board off the streets in one of his many accommodations, or whether they earned themselves a few months. If someone brought Hope in, they could earn a few months. From her spirit that fought every step of the way, but more because Scott liked Hope. She shook her head at the blurred image of herself. If that image reflected reality, maybe she'd have it easier. Then again, maybe not. A sound easing along the street caused her to spin around, knife snatched from her back, aimed at whoever came. Her ears perked and the sounds that drifted her way magnified. Clothes shifted against skin. Leather boots groaned against the concrete, crunching over broken glass. Throats cleared. Deep breath inhaled, followed by an exhale that gave off the distinct, musty, acrid, intense odor of cigarettes. She ducked into the nearest building, taking a chance with what hid inside. What headed her way was worse. An abandoned bar sat across from her on the adjacent wall. After shift one night, the club waiters and waitresses had overturned stools where patrons used to sit and have their nightly drink. A few of the stools had toppled off and now lay abandoned and covered in dirt and dust along the floor. The tables that were once used to gather around and chat while having dinner or lunch, nobody came in this establishment in the morning, were left the same as the bar. Some chairs were overturned and left upside down on the table, while others had long since fallen. Nobody swept up here anymore. Nobody came here to chat with one another and discuss plans for the weekend, or gathered during the weekend for time off. Hope stopped inside the doorway with her back to the wall. She listened to the noises that surrounded her. Within the bare walls came silence, but not outside the old club. Hope became as one as possible with the wall, stood stock still, and waited. I told you I heard a sound over here, a gruff voice complained. Disbelief met this. We don't have time for this. We need to get inside. Think the cleaners will take time to scan us in this crap-ass zone? Hope checked around the corner. Two men who sported familiar symbols on their hands, amaranthan soldiers, wore the symbol of a red and black pentagram on top of black flames. Symbols branded into their skin as these two men had on their hands. Amaranthan guards were the closest to Derek. They sported the symbol of a hooded Grim Reaper with the scythe near his head, a symbol scorched into their neck with the red and black pentagram behind him. If one spotted that mark, it reflected Derek being close. Guards were the ones who traveled with Derek. The associates wore the same pentagram on top of a black wolf paw on their upper arms to symbolize their power. A benefit for those in high power was the ability to have the mark go unseen unless needed. The man behind it all sported a red and black pentagram behind black skull and crossbones. Few had ever seen him or the tattoo. Most feared it so much they prayed never to spot that symbol. Derek, the amaranthan who came in when the world needed a savior. People didn't see past the money, looks, and promise of hope he offered. When they realized the hope was for him and not them, it was too late. Derek had taken over. His amaranthan soldiers, guards, and the associates ruled. The associates found a place for their power and wealth to multiply. They didn't stand in Derek's way. For centuries they stood by, making decisions behind the scenes. Once Derek came in and opened that door for them, they stepped out into the daylight and crushed the government that remained, with Derek's help. Afterward, the world had no longer been the same. Chapter 3. It would be better for all of us if you both idiots just kept going. Don't come into this building. Do not investigate the sound, boys, or it won't end well for you. The two men outside the bar, behind the wall Hope stood hiding against, seemed to debate with themselves. Should they pass, or should they go? It could mean a big payday if they investigated, but then it could mean their death or a lot of hassle at the end of their shift. Hope thought to herself, it would be better for us all if you both idiots just kept going. Don't come into this building. Do not investigate the sound, boys, or it won't end well for you. Which choice were they going to go with? The winner is... Humans stopped wanting to connect with each other for fear of being captured and used, for fear of those they trusted most turning on them. The strong preyed on the weak. Humans distrusted what they saw, what they heard. They no longer knew what was reality versus what was pure fantasy. The human mind altered. Unless the person was strong enough to handle the change, they went mad. Only those who harnessed the earth's energy and understood it improved and survived. The ones believed weak became strong. Everything progressed from there. Humans reformed and became superior to what once was. Evolution took over and altered the DNA of those who came to survive in this new world. Evolution made sure humans possessed the abilities needed to fight the new order of the land. Not all humans handled those changes. The ones who believed humans would head to another plane of existence and their psychic abilities would awaken, did not understand how right they were. They didn't plan for what came. Hope pulled back and placed her head against the wall again. She clenched her teeth. She didn't need this. Not now. Her plans for the night didn't include capture. She examined the blackness around her, searching every inch for a way to escape. She had to do something. If she stayed where she was, they would find her. The man who thought he heard her didn't sound as eager to get out of there as his buddy. He had to satisfy his curiosity before they left. The winner goes to checking the building out. Damn it. Hope shook her head. Children became rarer as fear grew of how they would develop. Life was funny that way. Children became a problem. For a long time, mothers had to hide their children until the children were old enough to survive on their own. Few of those children born were amaranthan, the new human. Something in the human's blood didn't allow mothers to pass on this change. Whether the mothers were amaranthan or not didn't seem to matter at all. Mothers raised their children under lock and key until the children came of age. Once that time came, the children went out and roamed the lands. The kids tried to find a place to live. Nowhere was safe from the hunters. The need to protect children became so fierce in most women that their thoughts changed their bodies. Power of the mind became a stronger element. Children who grew up with those mothers saw what their mothers had to go through to protect them, and they didn't want that life. The children who survived didn't want to spend over 10 years of their lives doing everything possible to make sure a child of theirs survived that fate. What life would that be for a child? Many of those sheltered children ended up sick because they were shielded from life, so they didn't build up the proper immunities. Many didn't survive once they hit the open land. If they didn't have to worry over hunters, they had to worry over the plagues that swept the earth, one after another, the next fiercer than the last. The government's push to get immunity shots achieved nothing but instilled a fear so deep in the hearts of their citizens that the shots were the problem, not the cure. They helped to pass on the flu and bring about the plague. Once it came, there was no stopping the advancement or keeping up with the way the plague kept adapting and changing. Nobody wanted to help those children who roamed the lands. They feared the children bringing yet another disease from another zone into their own. So they turned them away again and again. Once they hit the open land, children were on their own. A light hit Hope in the face and her eyes flared. She snapped them shut. She raised an arm to block the light from her face. Bright spots formed behind her lids. A piece of wood cracked under the male's foot, who advanced into the building. She thought to herself, why couldn't you boys just let it go? I won't tell on you. Nobody has to know but us. Leave it to Amaranthan soldiers to have no fear about dark buildings like this. The light caused splotches to dance in her vision when she opened her eyes. "Hey, Marshall!" the man shouted when he spotted her. He figured she was an average free bird. He wasn't too worried and remained casual. "Over here!" The man directed the light back her way, and she flinched away from the brightness. Hope cursed under her breath. "Stay put, girl." Marshall entered the club. Hope shoved away from the wall and ran at the Amaranthan who held the flashlight on her. When the man with the flashlight turned to face her, her body smashed into his. The assault rocked him off balance. Before he could wrap a hand around her arm, she darted past. His fingers brushed her arm, unable to find solid grip. "How the—" Marshall called out to his buddy. "John?" John answered while he stumbled away and caught his footing. "Stairs!" Hope dove deeper into the pitch-black building. A shot rang out next to her head. The bullet narrowly missed her and struck the wall instead. "Try to get her alive, you idiot!" one man yelled to another. She couldn't tell which. Marshall was on her heels as she reached the staircase. His grunts echoed through her, only to spur her on. She picked up pace and leapt for the bottom stair. Hope grabbed the iron railing and used the momentum to spin around the bottom rung and head up. John slammed sideways into the wall at the bottom of the stairs. He didn't have the finesse she did. Marshall's hand wrapped around her ankle, but it was too late. She slipped free. He cursed. The two men battled at the bottom of the stairs. They each wanted to get to her first. Hope made it to the top and turned down the side. The metal clanged beneath the men's boots as they advanced up the stairs, intent on catching her. A wooden door teased her from the end of the walkway. Hope went for it. She turned the knob and slammed against the door with a oof. Locked. Damn! The two men crashed onto the top landing together. "I said stay put," John ordered, his malice clear. He headed toward her first with his gun raised. His fingers slid over the trigger. Hope backed away from the door until her back touched the metal railing. "You're making this harder on yourself," John said. "Yeah, right." Hope reeled back, then charged into the wooden surface in front of her. It gave under her weight without issue. She half stumbled through, and her arms flailed before she caught up to her feet. The door had opened onto an outer roof that didn't appear solid. Not bothering to risk the mere second she had to glance back, she plunged forward. "Son of a bitch!" the men both yelled from behind her. Hope picked her way over the roof, going as fast as she dared. Another building lay in front. She judged the distance small enough to leap to. She slowed enough to calculate the strength of the roof that remained, then ran with everything she possessed. The men behind her picked up speed. She had to risk the jump. The ledge came upon her faster than normal. At the last second, she figured out it was farther away than she first thought. By the time she was in the air, it was too late to stop. She slammed into the brick wall at the opposite side. Her hands raked against the stone edge. The breath puffed from her chest. Her fingers could find no grip, and body scraped over the edge to the ground. Hope's fingertips grated along the rough edge of the building. Her fingernails scraped over the sandpaper-like texture. The bricks slipped under her fingers. With each one that went past, she believed she was plunging to her death. She clawed at the wall to no avail. At the last second, her fingers found purchase and she dug them into the small indentation. Hope hauled her body up and over the ledge, throwing one leg over, then the other. She dropped down onto the roof, taking a moment to catch her breath, sucking in a few lungfuls of air. The world around her blurred in and out. Her heart raced. When she glanced over to the club, she spotted the two men still headed her way. They didn't plan to stop either. They had figured her out, and they wanted the payday Derek would give. Anger flashed through her. It shouldn't have been so obvious. Her eyes flashed, but before she could react, one of them leapt from the roof of the club. Hope flew to her feet and took off across the roof. A huge thump came from the place she had been a breath ago. The man had made it to the roof. The other had disappeared. He must have went around to the other side. The one who ran behind her didn't misread the distance like she did. Marshall and John proved to be as stubborn as she was. The payday she presented meant more to them than their lives. John gave her an evil grin when she checked on his location. His eyes sparkled with the threat. He thought for sure his buddy Marshall would cut her off. Hope planned to prove them both wrong. Don't be fools. Focusing on where to head next, her one choice was to head down into this building, unless she planned to go back, but there were no other buildings to choose. She scanned the area and spotted a door that may head inside. She spun on her heel, the rooftop crunching beneath her boots as she sped toward the door. Hope made it to the door, and a thrill of excitement swept through her. The door stood wide open. Rushing through, she circled round and grabbed hold of the edge. She shoved the door shut. A large body collided into it on the other side at the same second. Hope and the man both rebounded backward with a grunt. Hope scrambled to her feet, then pressed her palms against the surface and pushed the door back into place. The door clunked into place. The guard cursed on the other side and struggled to get back on his feet. A padlock sat unused on the door's latch. Hope lifted it from the ancient metal and prayed it held long enough. She pressed the latch into place, slipped the hook through the hole, and snapped the lock together. Then listened for the faint click. The guard grunted as he crushed his body against the door again. The door creaked on its hinges. Hope didn't have much time. She shoved away from the door and took off to find the stairs. When she located them, she all but tumbled down the stairs in her effort to increase her speed. Her legs were sore from misjudging the distance between the two buildings. She pushed her limits, but she still possessed reserve strength. Strength she used. The other guard was around here somewhere, so she kept an eye on the rest of the building. Her eyes flashed in the darkness, illuminating the pitch black into the silvery purple of the moon's glow. At the bottom of the stairs, she spun around the corner, but didn't notice the small box hidden by the post. Her foot caught the edge of the wood and her body careened over the top. She yelped and tried to recover, but the effort flipped her onto her back. She sat up to find a gun aimed at her face and ready to fire. "Kind of fucks up your plan, don't it?" Marshall asked. Hope glared at him and snorted. "In fact, it didn't. I'm fine, thanks for asking, by the way." She leaned back to place her palms on the gritty and grimy floor behind her. "Don't suppose you'd want to make this easy and get up without causing trouble, would ya? This gun may not do much, but I imagine it'd hurt." He raised an eyebrow. You know, Hope tilted her head. That isn't in my nature. Not much fun either. The sarcastic edge that remained in her voice earned her a glare. He pressed the gun against her temple. Her eyes flashed. His eyes widened. The door above them crashed open. Hope took the moment presented and sat up. While he was distracted, she slammed her palm against the barrel of his gun. Marshall didn't expect her to prove so strong. The gun slipped from his hand and clanged to the ground. He went to punch her, and Hope ducked. She grabbed her blade from her waistband and in the next instant plunged the knife between his legs as hard as she could, the blade slicing his flesh with ease. Hope finished the job and twisted the blade to make sure the wound wouldn't close. Marshall crumpled beside her. John shouted from above them. Hope tumbled to the side, grabbed the gun, and hopped to her feet. She was in luck. It wasn't ID'd to the user. She spun and aimed the gun on Marshall, touching the button to ignite the core. The gun crackled to life and she squeezed the trigger. Marshall's head exploded and small pieces of his skull flew everywhere and his blood sprayed the room. His headless body dissolved to the ground. John's heavy weight thudded behind her. Hope spun and his fist slammed into her cheek. Blood flew from the side of her mouth. The hit spun her around and she dropped the gun. She fell to the cement floor. John reached for the gun and she twirled her legs around to straighten. Once straightened, she circled a leg under him and hit John's legs. He reeled backward. Hope dove for the gun and just about had her hand around the handle. John recovered and grabbed her ankle, giving it a harsh yank. She cried out and flipped around on her back with a glare. Gun idea abandoned. Enough of this basic fighting, she thought. John's eyes widened. Her eyes flashed and her hair flew out from her hoodie. She arced her arm toward him. An explosion rocked the building to its core. John flew backward. His body burst into a million pieces. The former John littered every corner and dribbled from the walls like hundreds of small slugs crawling downward. Hope stood up, brushed herself off, and fixed her clothes. She wiped the back of her hand over her mouth and glanced at the blood. Hope grumbled, "Asshole," beneath her breath, then ran from the building, grabbing the gun as she went. If anyone caught her near the area, Derek would put hunters on her case. She'd already dispatched one of his groups, and they hadn't been hunting her. She knew better than to deal with another. Blocks and blocks later, she had rid herself of the gun and quit running. She had no use for guns, even less when it was one of Derek. She didn't need another way for him to trace her. They would never round her up like a common freebird. Shoving her long locks back inside the hood of her coat, she went back to being anything but remarkable. So this was Hope of the Future by Kimberly Sue Iverson, read by the author herself. You can find this book on all major retailers and not yet back on paperback, so if you happen to see one, it's probably the older version. Older only means my name will say Kim Iverson on the cover. Same story, I just haven't uploaded the one with my full name. I switched to my full name about 10 years ago, so you can see how old that one would be. If you've read it or enjoyed this sample, let me know. I'd love to hear. More to come. Thank you for reading and subscribing, or listening in this case. I'm beyond grateful you chose to spend this time with me. What are your thoughts? Engage with me and start a conversation. Just don't be rude about it. And as always, your shares are so incredibly appreciated. Share with anyone you think may enjoy this. Word of mouth is the best form of expanding the reach, so this reaches the eyes and ears of whoever may enjoy it. My donation link, if you found value in this and would like to help support me to help keep it going, is ko-fi.com/Kimberly Sue Iverson. That's ko-fi.com/Kimberly Sue Iverson. Every little bit helps, so thank you for your generosity. Remember, kings and queens, everyone is fighting battles inside nobody can see. Who are you willing to see today? And who are you willing to let see you today? I hope someone can bring a smile to you today, or you can bring a smile to someone else. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you are more than welcome to, and I'd love to connect you there. For Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, I have to use Kimberly Sue Iverson. There is also a page for Redhead Rewriting Reality on Facebook, but for X, Twitter, Blue Sky, Telegram, and most other socials, you can find me under Kimber Bites. That's KIMBERBITES, which is what I normally use. Do you like Snapchat? Feel free to add me under Feisty Kitty. That's FEISTYKITTY. I usually try to use the same picture across the board, but you can always ensure you have the right person by checking my website link cave, which is KimberlySueIverson.com/link-cave. Want a chance for your story to be featured? Whether you're an author starting out, published and want to boost, have a tale of old to tell that has been passed down through family, or just want to share your own life experience, get in touch. Email stories2read@KimberlySueIverson.com. That's stories2read@KimberlySueIverson.com.